Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Series with Kevin, where we add value to people's lives happening every day on eBiz Radio at 12 o'clock, guys. Joining me back for the marketing segment is marketing and communications expert Craig Pagely. How you doing, Craig?
I'm well, thanks. Yeah, Kevin, another week. Gosh, and Monday's over and it's flying by like you can't believe.
Right. It just felt like we spoke yesterday.
I know. It does feel like that.
So, Craig, to sort of give us some insight of what we chatted about last week, don't you want to give us a quick recap on big pointers? If you did miss out on that conversation, guys, go and check it out. But last week's recap was all about.
Right, great. Yeah, Kevin, thanks. The good topic of e-commerce and picking up from our discussion last week, it's last week, I should say, it's more clear than ever that e-commerce is something that is with us forever. It may well be around in different formats, different permutations as technology evolves, but essentially it's the same thing. Using digital platforms to exchange goods or services between producers and consumers. And some of the key points that I picked up on from last week, I'll give you a quick overview of those. And really, the definition aspect is quite key here. So, omni-channel e-commerce is e-commerce sales approach that uses multi-channels and gives consumers that unified experience across all channels, whether it's from an in-store experience or engaging with other digital channels. And, we're always talking about that seamless experience, understanding where a conversation picks up, where it pauses, where it recommences, and where it closes off. So that multi-channel experience is vitally important in the e-commerce world. It's a strategy where a brand is present along multiple channels, and it's where customers can use and interact with a brand in various ways, as I say. These channels could be apps, they could be websites, they could be mobile sites, email, bricks and mortar. In fact, some of the digital within bricks and mortar, and then the typical social media channels as well. And using e-commerce marketing strategies like social media and search engine optimization is actually quite important to build your brand's awareness, help you drive sales, and grow in one of the most exciting and competitive marketplaces at the moment. So the 5 key sort of simple strategies that we considered last week when going through the detail was, number 1, search engine optimization. So SEO helps you rank in your search engine results, and it helps drive traffic to your website, and it helps customers find you. And by identifying those the target keywords and phrases that shoppers use to find your products, you can increase the flow of qualified leads to your site. Pay-per-click ads, extremely helpful for generating traffic to your e-commerce site, particularly while you're in the early stages of building out your organic rankings. Social media, 71% of adults online use social media, and chances are therefore high that you're going to be found by them when you target them with Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or some of the other social media sites that are in use. And social media is definitely the right platform to promote your products, your events, your promos, and it's definitely one of the most recommended e-commerce website marketing strategies. Content marketing, you hear me talk about this constantly, is creating and sharing that valuable content online is vitally important for search engines, as they respond very well to the keywords and the quality defined content. Blogs are also a great way to deliver quality content, but they can't be sterile. They really need to include the likes of some infographics and downloadable white papers, etc. And then last but not least, in that mix of strategies is your email marketing. Email newsletters is a great way to generate and share your updates, your new products, posts, advertise new products and offerings, and to drive competitions. And also a great way to really build the strategy for driving traffic and clicks and the likes by pushing that message, getting people to pass it on, rewarding them for word of mouth recommendations and the likes as well. Yeah. What was really cool though, Kevin, in this past week's follow-up reading, and I'm finding an interesting parallel here in our last 3 topics in particular, is we select a topic, and the very next week I'm finding a whole host of other quite sexy information on that topic as well. And I came across a piece published on the small business site .coza, which is leading industry players in the online retail space, including Payfast, Bid or Buy, PriceCheck, UAfrica, Xnilo, and Lululemon, are getting behind a new initiative to support the growth of South Africa's e-commerce industry. And as such, they're launching the inaugural e-commerce day on Wednesday, the 10th of March. And yeah, really, really great. So we see that the objective there is to grow the local e-commerce sector, and those players are really behind banding together to help the entrepreneurs and the smaller businesses flourish on the e-commerce platform.
That's great, Craig. I love that, and I think it's such a necessary conversation to be had, and even an entire day committed to it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned last week that we also have a really important topic for today, one that touches on human psyche, and that has a lot of relevance to the leadership work that I do in South Africa. Can you tell us more about what we can expect today?
Kevin, yeah. It's a really deep conversation today, and one where there is so much content, and I've had to, scratch around to try and find relevance without going off too far in one direction or the other. But really, the key thing we're going to discuss today is look at what organizations and brands are doing about the mental health narrative that is so prevalent in society today, especially as a direct result of the challenges that COVID and coronavirus has brought the world. And to validate the importance of this topic, I want to start with a quote from an interesting article I read on businesstech.coza, which was published by their staff writer on the 11th of April, almost exactly a year ago, titled, "South African Companies Should Offer Mental Well-Being Support as Part of the Coronavirus Measures."
Yeah.
Legal expert. The article states, widespread uncertainty about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is likely to take a toll on mental well-being of many South Africans, which we all know it has. Yeah. As the country moves deeper into the lockdown period, employers are encouraged to take whatever measures are reasonably available to them to help safeguard the mental health of their employees. This article goes on to state that the World Health Organization has already flagged the rising stress levels that COVID-19 crisis is generating, and countries such as Australia have announced government-funded programs to help its citizens cope with the mental and emotional strains that accompany the pandemic. And unfortunately, we don't necessarily have those kinds of programs in South Africa. However, there are a couple of really great brands and companies in corporate South Africa that are addressing those particular issues around mental health.
Yeah, it's interesting, Craig. The fact that you mentioned this is because you're kind of going, so what does like mental health got anything to do with marketing? But essentially, when you start touching on the importance of how brands are actually showing up, one of the key elements to what I'm currently doing is, cultivating leadership within a brand and within a brand space. And that is an internalized process that has got nothing to do with, an external kind of skill that you have. Everything is driven from an internal process. And, to the point where, you get to coaching retainers where you're coaching through an entire organization based on the fact that the organization now needs coaching. People
Yes.
need to know how to be better and have an internalized conversation. And I think if brands really start paying attention to the fact that, mental health, and especially now with COVID being what it has been, not only the strain that it puts on relationships, the strain that it puts on parents for having to homeschool their kids, all of the above, right? It's becoming bigger and more important that we actually consider why mental health is such a big thing. So with that said, Craig, mental health issues and mental well-being support, what are brands and corporates doing to assist, and are they actually doing anything?
Yeah, great question. And just a nice piece that you mentioned earlier on that I just want to build on as well, and that is the individuals in the organizations all contribute to making up that brand. So, you talk about that focus on individuals deep into an organization at a leadership level, cascading through the organization. All of those individuals collectively contribute to what that brand stands for. And if those organizations aren't fixing it from within, then the brand isn't going to stand for much, and that's really not where they want to be. So great question. Let me just provide some context again to what the term mental illness or mental health disorders actually means, because it's a fairly broad statement, and as you know, it's always accompanied with a very negative stigma, Kevin. So let's have a quick look at that. Again, I've looked at a broad range of definitions and understandings to try and reference what this term actually is, and I came across a really simple, beautiful set of words from the Australian government's Department of Health, and the article goes like this. So, mental illness is a general term that refers to a group of illnesses in the same way that heart disease refers to a group of illnesses and disorders affecting the heart. Mental illness is a health problem that significantly affects how a person feels, thinks, behaves, and interacts with other people. And it is diagnosed according to standard criteria. The term mental disorder is also used to refer to these health problems. On the other hand, a mental health problem also infers with how a person thinks, feels, and behaves, but to a lesser extent than mental illness. Mental health problems are more common and include the mental ill health that can be experienced temporarily as a reaction to the stresses of life. Mental health problems are less severe than mental illnesses, but may develop into mental illness if they are not effectively dealt with. And the last point probably being the most important is many people really don't face those realities, Kevin, and as such, they never get the necessary treatment and support for the mental health issues. So you can see the slight nuances from one to the other, but definitely mental health leading to mental illness if not addressed and taken care of early enough in the equation. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, with by that definition, we can almost assume that the world is having a mental health problem at the moment, right?
Yeah, great statement. Absolutely, and the whole world has. That's quite right.
We've gone through stresses that we've never been. None of us alive have actually been through anything like this. Suddenly, it's happened. We have history that speaks to it. But, we don't know how this has actually affected our mental health.
And, Kevin, the interesting thing with that is if you let's just look at South Africa, for instance. Folk of our age, we've gone through an incredible journey where some have had to go and do conscription in army, and others like myself just refused to do that and, try to navigate away from it as much as I could. Yeah. The stresses of that journey for those on the front line, the stresses of the journey for those who were being subjected to totally unnecessary behaviors and things like that. Those stresses were probably the last time that many of our generation had to deal with anything of this nature. The millennials have never experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
And really, that's where the big thrust of this fall down is happening across the world, where these youngsters, young adults and teenagers are the ones that are suffering the worst. And there's some interesting stats that I'll pick up on as we go through this particular conversation. But you're absolutely right. The whole world is in a place, in a space that is just, we haven't experienced for many, many decades. So let me start by looking at some stats from the USA, which I found in a very, very interesting piece on KFF.com. KFF is a leader in the health policy analysis and health journalism space. And their report, published on February the 10th this year, it was compiled by a number of contributors from their business, namely Ramita Panchal, Rob Kamal, and Cynthia Cox. Titled The Implications of COVID for Mental Health and Substance Use, the report notes the following. The COVID pandemic and resulting economic recessions have negatively affected many people's mental health and created new barriers for people already suffering from mental illness as substance use disorders. So during the pandemic, and here's where the stats are really interesting, Kevin, is that during the pandemic, about 4 in 10 adults in the US reported symptoms of anxiety or some kind of depressive behavior.
Yeah.
A share that's largely been consistently up from 1 in 10 adults who reported these symptoms exactly a year ago. So 1 in 10 to 4 in 10 over the period of COVID, and that's quite scary.
Sure.
The KFF health tracking poll from July 2020 also found that many adults are reporting specific negative impacts on their mental health and well-being, such as difficulty in sleeping, 36% of them, difficulty in eating or eating disorders, another 32%, increase in alcohol consumption or substance use, increased by 12%, and worsening chronic conditions, increased by 12%. All of this due to the worry and stress over the coronavirus. And as the pandemic wears on, ongoing and necessary public health measures expose many people to experiencing situations linked to poor mental health outcomes, such as isolation and job loss. And I think those 2 points probably being the most difficult to cope with.
So, yeah, I miss those numbers. I mean, although they American stats, I completely relate to that. You know, I've had major stresses around COVID, and because I'm also asthmatic, you know, so.
Oh, wow.
So when we first went into lockdown, I didn't leave the house. I didn't do anything. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go to the shop. Nothing, you know. My fiance did everything, and he kind of like when he got home, we were sanitizing everything, and so you know just the added stress that it created. So you know these numbers look. Yeah, I'm like I had difficult sleeping and eating and increased alcohol consumption and all of that. So I mean,
my son is type 1 diabetic, and you know, so the journey he's been through. He's in Cape Town. I haven't seen my son in the last year because I daren't get on a plane, arrive there, expose myself to him, and potentially, you know, expose him to the virus. So, you know, in the next week or two, hopefully, if we don't see a big third wave arriving, you know, once Easter is settled, then I'll jump on a plane and head down to visit. But during the heightened period, when we were allowed to start traveling, I just couldn't do that. And he's really managed incredibly well, but he's had a lot of angst and anxiety, and he's isolated himself in a very stringent way. So good on him. But yeah, you know, when I chat to him every single day, the stresses that he talks about are just really worrisome.
Yeah, and I mean that speaks to the severity of the situation that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, look, I think we're heading into a bit of a more positive situation because the figures are starting to show a bit of a decline, downward trend. Some of the rigid lockdown controls are being eased around the world, and I think the real positive, particularly for the Northern Hemisphere, you know, it's going to be a long while before we see any of this benefits in South Africa per se, is the aggressive vaccination rollouts. And, you know, that really is a big mental guide and aid. People get to that point and there's a big mental release when they've had that opportunity. And I've tested that with a lot of my friends who are living in the Northern Hemisphere and got to understand where their head is relative to pre the vaccination and now, and there's just this incredible relief and sense. They haven't changed their lifestyle to become reckless, but there is just this absolute sense of relief and taking a huge weight off their shoulders. And you know, the sooner we get to experiencing that in South Africa, the better. And we need that because we need to get our economy back in motion and eliminate these barriers from us.
Absolutely, yeah. But I just see with some of the insights that you share from Forbes.com as well. There's some really nice information that you found there.
Yes, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, again, you know, they're phenomenal articles out at the moment, and a lot of them are really talking to this future of work and how companies can continue supporting their employee mental health. That article published on the 20th February this year as well. And it's great to see how many current articles there are. So we're talking about real tangible stuff from 2020 to 2021.
Yeah.
And published in, as I say, 20 Feb 2020 by Brian Robson, PhD. We see that stress, negativity, and general anxiety risks have taken a positive turn at the beginning of 2021. But here's something that I think is going to fascinate you immensely, is the study was conducted using the Total Brain app. And I'll talk a bit about the app in a short while, because I don't know if you know about the app at all. And it stated the following. By the end of January, employees' stress and risk of general anxiety dropped down to pre-pandemic levels, and resilience and social connectivity climbed back to positive levels not seen since before February 2020. So really positive. So looking at a data comparison in that report between the period December 2020 to January 21, this is what we found. There was a decline in the risk of depression, down 30%, and a decline in post-traumatic stress disorder, down 25%. And there was an increase in sustained attention, up 21%. All positive. That's really, really great to see a stat like that. However, the risk of depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and sustained attention levels still remain worse than they were before COVID-19. So whilst we're getting some positive movements in the right direction for both or all three of those variables, the risk of depression is still 71% higher than it was before COVID, Kevin, and the risk of post-traumatic stress disorder is still 33% higher than it was before COVID. So while the data is encouraging and there's reason to be more optimistic for the future, America is still facing a major mental health crisis. Large employers hope that this positive trend will endure and that employers continue to take advantage of the ongoing well-being strategies and other employee-sponsored support, such as additional job flexibility, healthy living programs, positive work-life balance initiatives, and increased education employer support around vacations. And, the American companies really are putting some good initiatives in place to assist. But Kevin, you must have a look at this app when you get some time, because the Total Brain app it's a fantastic and fascinating piece of tech. And it's positioned as a powerful neuroscience-based mental health and brain performance app, and this will play right into your leadership space, and it allows users to do sort of 4 key things. It does a self-monitor assessment of all 12 brain capabilities and risks. It allows a practice of short to medium-term self-care. It enables access to professional care where needed, and it measures the treatment impact over time as well.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm so glad that you found this app. I'm totally going to check it out. That's really, really fascinating. And it is based in neuroscience, right? So all of these things that really speak to mental health is everything that's happening in your brain, and essentially your brain's is leading you to get to a set of results, and it's just doing it by setting up neural pathways in a certain kind of way.
Yes.
Recognizing that and sort of saying, okay, well, if this is what's happening, how am I, I often, sorry, Greg, it's not even part of your information today, but I share a neuroscientist called Dr. Andrew Huberman, who often speaks about that, and specifically around neuroscience. And if we just understood the strategies of behavior that's connected to why we're getting the outcomes we're getting, then we have an actual practical way of changing things and making things different, right? So, yes. But exactly on this point, it's really fascinating to see the figures happen, and having an app that you can actually use and get different results is amazing. So I'm definitely going to go check that out. But you provided us some useful insights on the USA and the UK. But what can you tell us about what's happening in South African companies? Because I'm not aware of much happening. I know there's a few companies that do stuff. But I think we're still in a space where we could do so much more. But what have you found that people are actually doing?
Yeah, Kevin, again, you make a valid point there because really there's always a lot of good stats from the Northern Hemisphere. There's big budgets behind brands and initiatives to enable this. We've spoken about this before as well. And unfortunately, South African companies are working to a large degree in isolation amongst themselves, and the collective pooling of funds to create great studies and things like that don't exist. However, we definitely are fortunate to see a number of well-established companies in South Africa running some decent programs, and I want to dive into a few of those with you. So, as with the rest of the world, we know that COVID has forced many South African companies to revisit their strategies and restructure their businesses with a key focus on digitization of their operations and internal processes. And that is going to continue. I think the wheels in motion have really been set for a continuum for a good few years for businesses to really revisit all of those factors here. Key thing here, the company culture changed almost overnight, and I'm sure you must be picking up on some of that, as I say, with some of the leadership work that you're doing at the moment. And the majority of employees having to work from home, needing to make substantial lifestyle changes to accommodate this, and then throwing into the mix the advent of homeschooling, and that obviously added another huge layer of extreme complexity to the situation. So the net result of that is turmoil, and many companies have experienced an increase in mental health issues amongst their employees and an overall decline in motivation and productivity. And that really is where we see some positivity coming out from some South African companies. So some of the companies doing good work in support of wellness, workplace wellness, Kevin, are the likes of Vital Health Foods, Nestle South Africa, Get Smarter, and Life Healthcare. And a nice mix of initiatives and activities. These companies have been looking at alternate ways to ensure a healthier and happier workforce. They've also had various employee wellness initiatives in place. And this is something that I found is quite important. The companies that have these employee wellness initiatives in place are definitely the companies that are gaining traction and able to deliver more value for their employees. And some of those initiatives include having facilities and benefits that are the likes of Moby clinics, on-site gyms, medical facilities, pause areas, healthy catering, wellness lectures and sports days, flexi time, remote work options, etc. And yes, obviously, a lot of those initiatives are really of value while employees at work. We are seeing a more formal approach to work, so we'll see the kicking in of those kinds of initiatives starting again as well.
Great, Craig. So it's encouraging to see that many companies are taking positive steps to help employees deal with their pressures. I believe that some of these initiatives will help and direct a positive impact on their staff, as there is much more direct relationship with staff than there has been between brands and their consumers. With that in mind, what are the brands doing to assist us in this regard?
Okay, again, you pick up on a really good point there. So whilst the world has been in lockdown and staff are working from home, organizations have really had to focus immensely on staff. Whilst the products and brands are working out in the marketplace, I think there's been a real necessity to build that stronger direct relationship with staff, even though they've been disparate and working remotely. So a good point there. The brands, though, yeah, it's encouraging to see that globally brands are outside of the organizations. The brands themselves sitting on the shelf are making some good noise in supporting programs like Mental Health Day, which is acknowledged by the World Health Organization, and that happens on the 10th of October each year. And again, Kevin, whilst predominantly American-based brands, some of the brands that I'm going to talk about on the initiatives that they're working on, some listeners may actually have heard of these brands. So let's just jump into a few of them. JanSport started the hashtag Lighten the Load campaign, which helped connect young people with mental health resources on their websites. And this is a trend that I have been seeing around many of the initiatives that are providing some input and support around this, even in South Africa, as they're using their own platforms to great success. They also feature spotlight conversations with experienced therapists on their Instagram live channels every Wednesday in May, which is Mental Health Month. So take note, Mental Health Month is in May and Mental Health Day is in October. So not contradicting ourselves, just putting it out there.
Yeah.
Then Kenneth Cole, a brand that I'm very familiar with from the USA. The founder and designer Kenneth Cole formed the Mental Health Coalition, which is a platform to destigmatize a whole host of mental health conditions. The
Yeah.
coalition works with mental health nonprofits like the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Bring Change to Mind, Child Mind Institute, Crisis Text Line, JD Foundation, etc., and the Trevor Project. So the advantage there is a critical contribution of capital, bringing a myriad of societies together through a single platform, so you could get much more speak and much more reach to many more people through the Mental Health Coalition. Lululemon, many people know this brand, a really good health and fitness brand. Lululemon created the Peace on Purpose coalition of meditation tools, and it included workshops hosted by their mindful leadership designed to help cope with anxiety, burnout, and grief. Ace Fitness, a non-profit health coaching certification organization that offered exercise programs and courses. They help position the connection between exercise and mental health on their blog, and content included articles that focused on the importance of exercise during social isolation and overall mental health benefits of physical activity. And as you can see there again, really purposeful positioning of content and use of their own assets is what brands need to be doing to get that message out there and become a platform for the conversation. That's the important thing. Other brands, Philosophy, Rare, Maybelline New York, all beauty brands. A key point to note here is the Rare brand, a brand owned by Selena Gomez, the ever so famous international young singer. Selena Gomez is diagnosed as bipolar and severely bipolar. And she has committed $100 million to
Wow.
supporting mental health issues and awareness around mental illness. And just phenomenal to see individuals. Yes, she can, because she is in that financial space to be able to do it, but really stepping forward and putting her money where her mouth is. And being at the front end of experiencing that on a daily basis, I suppose probably helps in driving that kind of initiative. Essex, the sports footwear brand, putting its money out there. Burger King, the famous quick service retail restaurant, also contributing to these causes. And from Unilever, Axe, the male deodorant brand, really bringing the issues of male mental illness to the fore there as well.
Yeah.
And a really cool brand called Own Your Stigma. It's a wonderful fashion T-shirt brand that really is working with young adults and youth to have bold statements on their T-shirts and be bold enough and brave enough to go into public and make a statement about the truth of where they are in their lives and present that case for others to read and embrace them and start conversations and just shift the stigma, which is beautiful. And they've got this most amazing positioning, which states, everyone is affected by mental illness. No one is defined by it. And that is just such a beautiful positioning, and kudos to them for that. So what I was intrigued to see is that the beauty brands, Kevin, are really putting a lot of money into it. And when you actually consider it, it's obvious to see why, because it's aimed at the young adults and teenagers, and really they're the ones who are most vulnerable. Peer group pressure, not being able to cope, their low coping mechanisms in their daily lives, let alone just through COVID lockdown. And those are the clever brands that have understood that if I stand by my consumers during these moments, my consumers are going to stand by me when they have the purchase decision opportunity again.
Craig, but would it be evil or wrong for me to say that a brand should leverage this as an opportunity?
No, that's yes, you're correct in saying that. No, they should never see this as an opportunity. They there are brands that are opportunistic. There
Yes.
are other brands that are creating value for a
Yeah.
broader sphere of society that'll never use their products. And those beauty brands like Rare, they are youngsters that will never ever be in a position to afford those products or have a desire to use those products, or young boys and men that will never want to have those products. Okay. But the sheer nature of that brand, its leader understanding what the investment in ensuring mental health means to society, that's
Yeah.
not opportunistic. That has got an end long tail benefit where the value it's brought through purpose is going to appeal to someone, and the net result is that individual may well support that brand in a loyal way. But a great question, because yes, oh gosh, Kevin, there are a lot of opportunistic brands out there who will just do tacit frontism around these kinds of initiatives, and try and invest a little money to gain some long-term value. Those brands should be shunned, really.
And that's why I'm asking, because it's just occurred to me that, some people might want to jump on that bandwagon and go, oh yeah, this is a great opportunity to do marketing. But, when you think of credibility and long-term legacy of what you're leaving, when you do it right, your brand credibility outshines far more than just creating a quick marketing opportunity.
Correct. And those long-term initiatives with substantial value to a bigger sphere of society really is where the focus should be. And I think that consumers per se need to understand that that's where they need to be working towards at the end of the day. They mustn't be caught in the headlights of a great advertising campaign around some brand who seems to be saying something that's appealing to your emotions and senses at that point in time, but actually it's not long-lived at all. Yeah. But in South Africa, what I really appreciate is the initiative has been driven by some of the key brands, and one that stood out for me is just such a beautiful brand in South Africa, and that is the brand of Miss South Africa.
Yeah.
And Miss South Africa is an incredible brand in her own right. She launched her mental health initiative aimed at providing South African citizens with necessary support when it comes to dealing with these mental matters. And this was done through Miss South Africa's initiative, #Mindful Mondays, in partnership with the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, SADAG.
Yeah.
And at 7 p.m. on a social platform every Monday, there was a conversation and dialogue, not a one-way conversation, it was dialogue, and able to bring those burning questions and challenges to the platform and get some assistance and guidance and support through that platform. So really, really wonderful to see a great brand like Miss South Africa stepping in and bringing real value. And the beauty about that, Kevin, is there's no long-term sale of a product at the end of the day. So that's when the initiative is as meaningful as it can be and as purposeful as it can be on the back of a great brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another really good source, you talk about the question there is a good source to review other companies that have implemented programs to support staff and society during COVID, Kevin, is how South African companies are responding to COVID-19. The article is found on the Global Compact Network South Africa site, and it covers South African private sector response to COVID-19. And some of the exciting things I saw there, and I just pulled out 4 or 5, in fact 4, because these are 4 that for me made a difference in answer exactly to your question. And I'm going to make a bold statement here. I left out the telcos and I left out the banks, okay? Because actually, they weren't making programs of difference. They were just offering, firstly, the banks some financial assistance during a period. Yes, that was meaningful in a particular way. And the telcos were enabling more connectivity, which is meaningful in a way. But actually, that was really just about their core product and who they are. And for me, it was tacit support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Castle Foundation went and provided free online primary and high school textbooks. Real meaningful contribution to youngsters who financially needed the assistance, and information-wise helped these folk during COVID when everybody was needing to go online and learn remotely. So that was a meaningful contribution. Pick and Pay launched the Feed the Nation campaign. They provided food and hygiene products to vulnerable South Africans during the lockdown. That was meaningful, purposeful. Some of those individuals will never be able to walk into a Pick and Pay and afford the product on the shelf. They're living in squalor down in the corners of South Africa. That was meaningful. Massmart contributed 230 tons of food over a 3-month period.
Wow.
Now, for me, those are brands that are actually doing something meaningful, not just saying, we'll give you a break on your credits, we'll give you a break on your repayments, and we'll lower our data rates so more people can be online. For me, those are the brands to move away from. These are the brands that I would support.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then Kevin, as we near the end of this conversation, I've actually got a book that I'm going to hold up here. It's really a fascinating book. It's called Surfacing, and it's published by Cipla, the author Marion Scher, and it's people coping with depression and mental illness. And I had a chat to Marion during the end of last week, hence me getting a copy from her. And I told her what we're going to be chatting about on the show today. And Marion specializes in this topic of depression and mental illness. And this particular book is focused on it. And it's really a good read. And Cipla have put an inordinate amount of money into this particular space in South Africa. And I really, whilst I'm not going to quote pieces from the book, I really wanted to give a shout out to Cipla as a key brand in South Africa that is really understanding this space and putting a lot of money and effort into creating initiatives and supporting authors to actually start writing about it and getting truthful stories from South Africans out into the public so we can build this conversation and let people identify with the words of others around these issues. So the brand Cipla stepping up to the plate, the brand Marion Scher really writing amazing insights for us to learn from.
Amazing. That's it's so fascinating, Craig. I'm sitting here just thinking about everything you're saying, and it's amazing that brands can actually get more involved, and the fact is, they should. It's looking after their people, looking after the audience, their consumer. If brands really think about it, it is an opportunity to create a whole new space for them, but also to create something that is long lasting and a legacy for them. So
yes.
If we had to sort of sum up, what are we, what can brands be doing, and how could brands do it better?
Yeah, Kevin, I've pulled a few little tidbits and points from the South African National Department of Health website, because it's outlining different ways in which individuals can actually cope with the stress and mental strain that's been caused by COVID. And in picking up these sort of 4 or 5 key themes, whilst these are specifically written to talk to individuals, very much talk to organizations. And when organizations understand what these delivery points are and start shaping their programs to deliver against those points, they will achieve 100% on point what individuals need to be doing and therefore supporting them. So the first recommendation for individuals is to ensure that there's a balance between the amount of information that you're being exposed to with regards to COVID and the pandemic and your own personal interests. And therefore that goes to brands. When brands are talking about their brands, where's that balance of at least bringing some value to society around supporting the conversation and the realities with which mental illness is real, and bringing some of that conversation to the fore. Because overexposure to information that's distressing for prolonged periods is incredibly negative and leads to anxiety and depression. So, how do brands lean in, be purposeful, and help shape the positive conversation? So that's important. Individuals should also ensure that any information they're exposed to is accurate and more and from a more reliable source, because as you know, there's a lot of fake news, a lot of negativity. We've got to find trustworthy sources. And again, there's great value for brands who can step in and own the truthful, real conversation that helps eliminate tension and stress around fake news and the pressures of fake news. Maintaining healthy habits such as eating well, exercising regularly, they are also encouraged. They're strongly linked to good health and mental well-being. And again, we spoke earlier about the organizations that are bringing those kinds of programs into their organizations. Definitely points for consideration there. For individuals, ensuring that sleep habits are maintained and avoiding excessive amounts of caffeine and alcohol. And recognizing the early warnings of stress is also integral to effectively managing and containing effects. And then these brands that are utilizing those platforms to open the conversation are the brands that really can highlight what those triggers are and what the early warnings are as well. And then practical methods of relaxation, assisting with breathing exercises and meditation, and most importantly, just having good, wholesome, honest conversations with family, trusted and loved ones, and creating those support systems around you. And concluding that sort of set of tips, Kevin, really, consumers should really consider and support brands that have gone out of their way and beyond traditional marketing to put mental health and emotional well-being at the forefront of their products and marketing messages. These are the brands that are leading from the front by demonstrating the commitment to making a difference to not only their loyal customers, but to the world as a whole. And I think, again, that answers directly to the point that you made earlier as well.
Yeah, I love that, Craig. And I think that's, it just lends itself to exactly what COVID was wanting us to pay attention to, is just be a little bit more responsible. Be more responsible for the space that you occupy or the people you're engaged with and how you engage with people. And so for me, it's just been a theme. It's like, be more responsible. And I think brands have the responsibility to do that. And as a consumer, we should start paying attention to the brands that do that and support that. Because I think at the end of the day, the more we do that, the more we're actually creating a consensus around being more responsible and being more responsible for how we show up in the world.
Correct, and that plays into the whole purpose conversation, which we'll get into that in one of the next conversations. And I got one or two really good folk who can come join that conversation with us. But absolutely, brands are leading from the front with their hand on their heart, and not their hand in front of them, waiting for the pennies to make themselves richer. That's where it's at.
I love it. Craig, thank you. That was a completely unexpected conversation to be had around marketing. And I think it's a good conversation, bringing some light to that intention. I think what is the intention of why you're doing what you're doing, right? But I mean, Craig, to sort of give people to look forward to our next conversation, what is coming up for us next week?
Yeah, great. Kevin, I want to stay close to this topic. So I've picked up on a fairly related topic, and that is, what are the trends driving remote work as companies start to reconsider bringing their staff back to the office, and in a more formal and structured way, and what will working from home look like moving into the future?
That's going to be interesting. I think it's on the lips of it's on the lips of many leaders out there and business owners, and all the employees are sitting waiting, going, okay, so what exactly are we going to be doing in the next 12 months or from here on out? So interesting conversation to have. Craig, thank you for today. Thank you for sharing your insights. And guys, that's the Lunchtime Marketing segment happening every Thursday at 12 o'clock on ebizradio.com. Check it out. Please tune in and shoot us a message. We definitely want to get hold of you and have more conversation. All the links and everything for Craig and myself will be in the description box below. Craig, thank you for chatting.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Look forward to next week.
Chat soon. Cheers.